Well, good morning and welcome to Being Mindful in the Midst of Chaos. I'm so grateful and honored to be with you this morning as we dig into the importance of self-care in a fast-paced world. You see, if you're not healthy and in a good mind space, you won't be able to be your best self for your employees. Now, if we haven't met before, my name is Michael Edwards. I'm an executive director on the John Maxwell team and president of the Edwards Group of Texas. The Edwards Group of Texas was founded to help you discover and unleash your potential. We're based here in San Antonio, Texas, and serve clients worldwide. Now, a little bit about me. I'm a former telecommunications executive who spent the last 25 years studying leadership and developing leaders just like you. Adding value to others and helping people realize their dreams is what gets me out of bed every single day. And I am both honored and excited to join you in your leadership and personal growth journey. Now, you've been following our website, our Facebook page, YouTube channel, you name it. I hope that you've noticed a series of masterminds and webinars with a common theme. I've coined 2021 the best year ever. And this morning is the fifth in a series of events designed to help you kick off 2021 on a solid foundation and make it the best year ever. Now, I know we're already a month in, January is gone. So kicking off 2021 has already happened. But if you're not there, if you're not in the space to make 2021 the best year ever, I can help. I absolutely love supporting people who are motivated to improve their lives. I'm ready to take you on a journey to help you understand a little bit more about mindfulness and really take your leadership to the next level. Now, I like to kick off these webinars with a little bit of interaction. We've got a pretty full house here. If you wouldn't mind, just popping into chat where you're calling from and what you hope to accomplish from this meeting. If you're not familiar with Zoom, the chat button is at the bottom of your screen. So if you just hit that, it'll pop you up into chat and you'll be able to have a discussion. I see I've got a few friends on here. Welcome, welcome. This is great. Good morning, Val. We've got San Antonio and Texas Hill Country well represented this morning, so this is wonderful. Oh, welcome, Connie. I'm very excited. You know, this webinar is a little bit different than other webinars that I've facilitated. Most of the webinars have really been about leadership and becoming a better leader and some, business practices and things like that. This webinar is about you. I say leadership isn't about you, but it's all about you. And this webinar, Being Mindful, helping you learn a little bit about self-care, is one I'm really, really excited about. Now, as we move through this morning's webinar, feel free to put anything into chat, put anything into the Q&A. We're going to use the polling feature a little bit throughout the presentation. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to pop up the first poll. And Brandon has been a faithful attendee to my webinars. I think this might be Brandon's fifth. So you're probably really excited about this poll, Brandon. But I'm going to share this poll just so we can understand how familiar you are with Zoom. So scale of 1 to 5, how familiar are you with Zoom? There's actually a 6th in there. I'm sick of Zoom. And so far, we're all very comfortable with Zoom. Good, good. 100% comfortable with Zoom. Fantastic. Oh, we've got one who's a 4. I might need your help later on. Good, good. All right. So that gives you a feel for how the seminar will go. I really love some interaction, even though it's kind of difficult without two-way video interaction. We do have two-way interaction through the chat, through the Q&A, and then through the poll. So feel free to pipe in. Now, if you're on Facebook Live, you won't be able to participate in any of this, but I'll check periodically, take a deep breath, look for any comments that might be on Facebook Live. Don't see any right now. But my hope is to really spend the next 45 minutes interacting with each of you to make this a really rich learning experience. So, without further ado, let's jump into being mindful in the midst of chaos. Now, again, this morning's topic is a bit different than what I normally speak on, but I thought it was really, really important to talk about. I think we'll all agree we've had to change some of our leadership practices, some of our business practices to adapt to the changes required by the events surrounding COVID. Many of us are working from home. And in some cases, we're not expected to ever go back to the office. Many employers are releasing office space in favor of this new Zoom world. And one of the things that I found is in speaking with leaders, they've had to take their connection game, their communication game, their compassion game up another notch, which requires more energy. Leadership requires energy. Being a friend requires energy. Being kind, compassionate, and caring requires energy. And I found in speaking with leaders around the globe that self-care is one of the things that we're letting go by the wayside because we're so busy doing the other things. And I found that if you don't practice self-care, it impacts your health, it impacts your energy, and in result is it impacts your leadership. So, I want to make sure that this doesn't take a toll on the people that I can reach. These conversations they really prompted me to put together a 45-minute talk to get some resources together to help you. These are really simple concepts that we'll go through this morning, and if you add them to your daily routine, they'll ensure that you're healthy in a really good mind space to continue taking care of those you serve. Because at the end of the day, taking care of those you serve, whether it's your employees or whether it's your family or whether it's the people in your community, if you're not healthy and up to the challenge, you won't be able to serve them at your best. Now, each one of us has a host of stresses that we deal with at work, at home, in our relationships, and in our own head. This event is a place for you to consider new ways to handle that stress in a mentally healthy way with with mindfulness and self-care. While you've probably heard of both of these terms, you might not be completely familiar with them. So before we move on, let's define them. Mindfulness, not mindless, is defined as the quality or state of being conscious or aware of something. I'll read that again. The quality or state of being conscious or aware of something. Pretty easy. Self-care. The regulatory function, which is under individual control, is deliberate and self-initiated. I'm going to read that one again too. The regulatory function, which is under individual control, is deliberate and self-initiated. Now, the big takeaway from that definition for me is it's self-initiated. I've got to take control of my self-care. I've got to make it a priority. If I don't make it a priority, it's not going to happen. If it doesn't happen, I'm not going to be my best self for those people around me. So let's talk about priorities. When it comes to being aware and in control of your mental health, mindfulness, and self-care, they all go hand in hand. But before you start taking steps to control the way your mind reacts to chaos in difficult situations, it's important to learn how to be conscious of the chaos and how it affects you. Then you can take measures to mend or redirect your cognitive process. Now, historically, as a society, we've been taught to give our mental health the attention it deserves. And as a result, we've learned to sweep issues under the rug, grin and bear it, get through toxic relationships, overload our schedules, take on more than we really have the bandwidth to do because we care so much about people and we want to make a difference. We are just so afraid to say no. And I'll tell you, as a leader, no is a very powerful word. And I know that many of us are parents. And, think about this. If you never told your child no, what would they become? So moving on to some relationship things, and we're going to talk a little bit about kind of relationship external, and we're going to talk about some self stuff internal to help make sure that we've got a good positive stance when we explore mindfulness. Now, whether we're born into families with difficult people, I know many of us have, or we find ways to find those types of relationships through friendships, partnerships, coworkers, it's really challenging how to know how to respond to someone who brings negativity and unhappiness to our lives. Now, I don't know about you. I am a very optimistic person. I am completely glasses half full. I would probably be accused of glasses full all of the time. And I want to exude that optimism to others. And when I interact with people who are negative, the black cloud overhead, it starts to drain me. And it's important that I regulate those types of relationships. And I say regulate because, I'm in a business where I help people. So if I have somebody who happens to be in a negative mindset, I don't want to push them away or eliminate them because I want to help them. And I know many of you want to do the same. So here's a couple of really easy techniques. One of the first things you can do is realize that the behaviors being presented to or reflected at you are not your fault. The way that others cope with their feelings is part of their mental health and not a reflection of who you are. Consider how differently two people might react to breaking a drinking glass. One person, they might just clean it up and not think twice about it and just move on. The other person, they just might flip out. They might get emotional. They might get mad. Heck, they might even break another glass as a result. Each is a reflection of the person's mental well-being and their ability to cope with their own feelings. Now, one of the most important aspects of being mindfulness in the midst of chaos is taking measures to eliminate as much of the chaos as possible. And I'll share with you several ways to do a lot of that. Oftentimes, the source of chaos and negativity comes from the people we choose to surround ourselves with. Now, while we can't control every interaction we have, when it comes to our regular interactions, it's our job to develop firm and clear boundaries about what we will and won't tolerate. Super important. Whether it's a gossipy coworker, an overly critical family member, or a toxic romantic relationship, eliminating interactions with people who bring down your good energy will leave more room for positive energy to enter. It's really, really important. And, in the workplace, gossip is a culture killer. As leaders, it's our jobs to create great culture. So eliminating gossip is a great first step. Understanding and eliminating toxic relationships, also a great first step. So I know we don't want to break up with friends, but not all friendships were meant to last forever. That's okay. While you shouldn't casually discard friendships or minor arguments, inconveniences, things like that, you should grant yourself permission to move on from relationships that no longer nourish and support you. If you feel exhausted by the idea of hanging out with someone, it's probably a really good sign you should move on. Now, I'm going to take a pause here real quick, check for any questions, and then we're going to launch a second poll. Do you have friends that you need to break up with? There it is. Take 30 seconds. Yes, no, or just one. I need to rethink many. While you're taking the poll, I'm going to check in with Facebook and see if there are any questions. Hey, well, the good news is none of us need to rethink many relationships. That's fantastic. It looks like a third of us have people in their lives they need to remove. And 2/3 of us have people in our lives we need to remove, and 1/3 of us do not. So, congratulations. I personally, I don't know that I have any that I need to remove. But again, I'm in a different place. My mission in life is to help others and come alongside others, even when they're in dark times. I think from a friendship perspective, I'm in a pretty good place. I'm going to end that poll, and we're going to continue on. So, taking the space you need from toxic family members. Friends are hard to part with, but family members are even harder. One of the best recommendations I can offer is to set limits on the amount of time you wish to spend interacting with toxic people. Make sure you keep those positive conversations positive, pleasant, focused on that person. And I'll tell you from personal experience, when I interact with folks who are in a negative mindset, and I am just positive and try to refocus them on the things that are positive and help them understand that the things that they're worried about, they really can't change. So why worry about them? It changes the conversation long term. And then eventually those conversations are mostly positive. It works. I'm telling you, it's a great technique. By keeping the focus of the conversation on them, you're purposely keeping yourself safe from unwanted drama while maintaining the relationship, if that's what you want to do. Family's a touchy one, right? We typically can't eliminate family relationships, familial relationships, and I don't want to, no matter how bad they might get. Really understanding some boundaries and how to handle some of those toxic family relationships will help you a long way. So we are truly on different paths. If you have a relationship with everyone you've ever had an interaction with, the relationship can last just a moment, a lifetime, or anything in between. Relationships are all different, right? Many of us have good friends that we've had since, the third grade. Some of us have relationships that, just didn't last. We didn't find value in them, or there wasn't value for the other person in that relationship. In each relationship, you cross paths and learn from one another. And since each of us are on different paths, you might only be walking side by side for a little while, but you also might cross paths later on. I'd talk about burning bridges. Don't burn bridges. You never know whose path you might cross down the road. You never know who you may be able to add value to down the road. Don't burn that bridge. Now, understanding that throughout your life, there will be many people who you meet, love, and learn. And ultimately, you play a role in how long you walk along a certain path. Super important. You make the choices, right? Now, here's a big one. Learning to say no. In order to cut down on chaos in your life, you've got to make it a priority to keep your plate filled with the right amount of work that your mental health can handle. I'm going to say that again. You've got to make it a priority to keep your plate filled with the right amount of work that your mental health can handle. I am personally guilty of this, and I know many of us are. We want to do everything. I call it boiling the ocean, and we cannot. It's very important to maintain critical health that we understand how to say no. Now, I know you might feel guilty the first couple of times you turn down people who ask you for favors, but it'll get easier with time. As you practice, remind yourself why you're saying no. Offer those reasons to the person if you feel comfortable doing so. And remember that by saying no, you're in turn saying yes to the things that you do want to spend your time and energy on. That's important. Doing the things that you want to do, because there's just not enough time to do everything. Difficult lesson to learn, very powerful and life-changing, as a matter of fact. So I know we've all sat through awkward and draining interactions. I think we're all faced with this either daily, weekly, but frequently nonetheless. The line between being polite and saving yourself from the stress of staying too long can be difficult. So I've got a few tips. Spending 5 minutes chatting with somebody is polite, right? 10 minutes is more than enough. Any longer than that, and you've got every right to excuse yourself. However, if you feel that you're in danger, if the person's acting, racist, misogynistic, just inappropriate, excuse yourself and walk away. Don't feel obligated to, spend a second with a person who's behaving in that route. But, we all want to be polite and we all want to show people that we care. Putting some time limits on some of those interactions that are stressful is a good tool to make sure that you don't get too wrapped up in it and don't allow it to bring your energy down. I'm going to take another brief pause, look for some questions. Check Facebook really quickly. And either you're all ready to go to lunch or I'm doing a fantastic job because we have no questions in either Facebook or in the chat. But again, feel free to ask any questions and we will continue to move down this path. So this is one that I'm a firm believer. Surround yourself with people who support you. This is a practice that I learned years ago, and it's a practice that has helped me be successful in a lot of ways. It's helped me be successful in ensuring that I keep my mindset positive. It's been successful ensuring that the people around me share similar values. Now, I caution you, you don't want to exclude people from you that don't support you or don't share similar values, because if you're like me, you want to help people. My mission is to help others discover and unleash their potential. And if I exclude people who don't think like me, don't share my similar values, then I'm excluding some people who I could help. So, we've covered the ways that we can eliminate excessive external stress and chaos in your life. So let's take a minute to remind you how important it is to keep people close to you who love and support you. Now, for many of us, it can feel as though there's no one who fits into this category. If this is the case for you, consider reaching out to a support group. Find other people that have interests like you. There are so many ways to do that, whether it's in your community at a local level, whether it's on Facebook. There's a ton of groups out there, whether it's in your church. If you're in an organization that has employee resource groups, I recommend using those. Because I'll tell you, any positive connections you can curate will help bring peace of mind to you. So now we're jumping onto my favorite part of the presentation, and that's all bringing calm to me. We talked about, eliminating some external factors or setting some boundaries around external factors. But for me, I love to talk about calm. So if you've ever watched a home makeover show, you know that physical space can impact mental well-being. From a cluttered bedroom to a poorly lit office space, the spaces that you spend time in directly impact your psychological health. Now, for me, there's two things that are super important in my space. One of them is removing clutter. If you've ever seen my office or my studio that I'm in right now, they are neat as a pin. Everything is purposeful. It's in a very purposeful place. There is no clutter. And that's not because I'm a highly organized person. I'm not by nature, but it is something that provides calm to me. And I think you'll find if you remove clutter from your workspace, from your household, from your bedroom, you'll find it might bring you some calm as well. Now, the other thing is light. For me, I've lived in places where the sun doesn't shine much in the wintertime, and it has an impact on me. So I've learned that bringing in light really helps my mental well-being and my calm. Natural light, in my office downstairs, I've got two banks of windows on two sides of my office. So it is light all of the time. Now, right now I'm in a studio without windows, but I've got some super bright lights to help illuminate the message. But it just makes such a big difference. Now, I'm told that adopting a plant can help too, but I do not have a green thumb. So my workspace is absent of anything green. However, I do get a great deal of calm from my golden doodles, and I always have at least one, oftentimes two, in one of my offices keeping me company. So right now, I've got one of them right down here on the floor as I speak, sleeping, and she just brings a great deal of calm. So here's another super important thing is the positivity reminders. I was just on a call with a group of leaders, and I talked about one of the practices that I'm going to do to help remind me to become a better listener is put 5 things on a 3x5 index card and take it with me. I make this a practice for all kinds of things positive, and it's one that's really served me well, and it helps keep those positive things out there. So while you're refreshing your space, you're bringing in colors, pictures, bring in some quotes, anything else that brings you a little bit of joy when you look at it. If you're at a loss of where to start, try creating a mood board filled with pictures, things that catch your eye. You can glance at it during the day. Maybe walk through a fun furniture store to get some ideas, or even create a Pinterest collection. I'm not a big Pinterest guy. I use it for marketing purposes, but there are some folks who have these great vision boards. And in this case, a mindful board, anything that you can do to remind yourself to stay positive. You can add pictures to the lock screen on your phones. You can add screensavers and things to your computer desktop to make sure that you're in a positive mood. It's super important that you surround yourself with positive messages all day long. It reminds me of the Saturday Night Live. I think the guy's name was Stuart Smiley. I like myself. I'm good. I can't remember his daily affirmation, but they make fun of it, poke fun of it. But there is so much truth to surrounding yourself with positivity. Spreading compliments. This is one of my favorite ways to curate positivity. Take the time out each day to do something kind for someone, compliment a stranger, or just share a smile. Now, I have an intentional daily practice where I do one thing to make a difference to somebody. That can be a lot of things. That could be, what can I do to make my wife life better? That could be, offering words of wisdom to somebody that you meet on the street who's hurting. That could be offering a bottle of water to the guy on the street corner that's asking for some change. That can do a whole lot of different things. But if you could make somebody smile, that's viral. And if you're like me, that just makes you feel good. Making someone smile is a pretty darn good mission in life. So spread those compliments. I'll share with you too, in this same meeting that I had at 9:00, one of the participants, a school board member, she intentionally last week wrote handwritten notes and called people to inspire hope in them. And that is just so powerful and so helpful. I've got a folder full of notes that people have written, from 30 years ago, from 25 years ago, that I'll pull out for inspiration. So that has a huge impact on the people around you. And as a result, it has a huge impact on your mental self-care. So, do you find yourself being judgmental towards others? This is a tough one. Next time you catch yourself throwing shade, pause and shift your thoughts into something positive about the person or situation. Kind of goes back to the old adage, if you can't say something nice, don't say it at all. But take it to the next step. If you can't say something nice, figure out something nice and say it. You're going to make a difference to that person. You're going to make a difference to yourself. Self-talk. Now, a lot of us get caught up in this negative self-talk, and we couch it or we justify it with saying, I'm my own worst critic. Stop it. Don't be your own worst critic. Don't bully yourself. It takes a toll on your mental health. As a matter of fact, next time you look in the mirror, start thinking about destructive thoughts. Stop and list out a few things you're grateful for. Eliminating negative self-talk is an important step to mindfulness. Filling yourself with hope rather than beating yourself up can be life-changing. Use your breath as a tool. Now, there are a lot of ways we can start curating a world around us that brings positivity and pushes negativity away, but we still allow stress to creep in. Now, for me, when that happens, I focus on breathing. Slow it down. Try to mimic the sound of waves, slow and steady, with a brief pause between the inhales and exhales. Now, for those of you who know me, I am a big Apple guy. I have Apple everything. Apple recently has done a great job of adding a couple of mindfulness features to the Apple Watch. If you have an Apple Watch, try using the breathe feature throughout the day. I do. It reminds me every day to breathe. That helps me pause. It helps me get into a really good mindset. It helps refresh me. It's a really good practice. So I'm sure the other phone providers and wearable providers have something very similar, but Apple's just done a really good job of that breathe feature, helping remind me every couple of hours to take some deep breaths for a whole minute. I'm going to pause here really quickly and check again for questions. So far, so good. All right. Well, I appreciate keeping up so far, and we will just continue down the path. Quick show of hands. And to show hands, there's a button on here that says raise hand. Raise your hand if you practice yoga. Looks like there are no yoga folks in the audience, or people are just too shy. I'll tell you, I practice yoga, and it's no secret. Exercise is great for the body. And if you want to take an extra step and really connect your body to your mind, yoga is something you should try. Yoga focuses on breath, the asanas or movements and poses, flows, turning the whole practice into kind of a moving meditation. And it's proven to combat stress. In my personal story, it is absolutely something that combats stress. It's one that I struggled to implement it, and I had to make sure that I did it first a day a week, and then a couple of days a week, and now I practice it 4 days a week, and feel like that's a pretty good place for me. And in today's day, there's really no reason to not be able to practice yoga or exercise. If you stream anything like Amazon or Netflix or any of the multimedia platforms that stream, even some of our cable companies have on demand, you can find some great yoga content there. Just Amazon Prime alone probably has like 40 different offerings of different types of yoga. And again, and no, Apple is not sponsoring this webinar, but if you're an Apple person, Apple Fitness Plus is amazing. They tie their fitness program in with the Apple Watch. And if you use Apple TV, it ties all that stuff in and just makes it fun. It makes it kind of gamify it. It becomes a really good practice for you. So if yoga is not your thing, that's okay too. Find something that serves as an outlet to focus your mind on the present moment so you can do something differently when you feel stressed. Whether it's cooking, crafting, coloring, petting a cat, tending a garden, keeping a houseplant, which is something I'm not good at. Taking time in your day to bring your mind away from anxiety and back to the present moment is what it's all about. So find an outlet, manage that stress and anxiety. Here is a super important one. Give yourself time to feel your feelings. While it's important to learn ways to cope with stress, your goal shouldn't be to distract yourself. Instead, find ways to release your thoughts, worries, and anxieties. If you have the means to connect with a mental health professional, don't be shy. Do that. Otherwise, try writing your thoughts on a journal, getting them out of your mind into a solid piece of paper, chain of thoughts. It will help you gain some perspective. Now, giving your time to think is an area many leaders neglect. Since the onset of COVID, I've been on my soapbox talking about taking time to reflect and think, recharging your battery. I'm very intentional about thinking time and schedule it every day. And I also look for opportunities to create, I call it me space. For example, last week, I spent 3 hours on the road, an hour and a half each way, and I intentionally left the radio off and put my phone on Do Not Disturb. And what this did for me is it gave me 3 hours to think. It was really a great, refreshing activity. It was just me, and the occasional interruption from my Waze GPS. So I really encourage you to look for opportunities to do that. We oftentimes want to fill downtime with something, whether it's music or noise or a book, and none of those things are bad. But if you can fill some of that time with just you and your thoughts, it's life-changing. Now, speaking of journaling, one of the best ways to train your brain to think more positively is to practice gratitude regularly. Gratitude rewires our brain so we can become more focused on the positive things and not the negative things. We're not going to become ignorant of the dangers if we appreciate the positives for a little while, but we'll become more open to the good things that are happening around us. Now, journaling has been something I've done for years and find a great deal of value in the practice. I use an app called Day One. It's easy to use, and it has prompts to remind me when I need to make an entry. It also has prompts to ask me a question if I don't have anything that's on my mind. And then I go back and use that as a historic record. Did I get better? Did I improve? Do I need to change anything? But I also keep a notebook and pen handy in my offices and bedside to capture important items if my phone's not nearby. You always want to have an analog backup in a digital world, right? So we're coming to the end of our time together. I've saved the most important piece of advice for the last of our seminar. Dedicate time to learn how to love yourself. I'm going to say that again. Dedicate time to learn how to love yourself. Sometimes the best way to practice self-love is to learn to enjoy your own company. So take yourself out to a movie or dinner or possible a solo trip. Solo trips have grown in popularity over the past year. You hear a lot of people talking about it, whether it's an overnighter or whether it's 5 days. It's really popular with business leaders and thought leaders. And I'm going to try it for the first time this March. I've rented an Airbnb and plan to spend 3 days in Texas Hill Country. I'm taking a few books. I'm taking a journal. I'm taking a locked down laptop with very limited access, no internet access. And I'm going to use this time to get to know myself better. I may take a golden doodle. I may take 2 golden doodles. I'm not really sure about that yet. Haven't figured that one out, but I'm going to take 3 days and see how this practice goes. I'm excited about it, and I think it's going to be one that I will probably integrate a couple times a year, maybe even quarterly. But I'll tell you, once you learn how to love and cherish yourself and really understand what you're worth, everything else will fall into place. So following this webinar, you'll receive an email with some resources to learn more about mindfulness. But I wanted to share with you a friend of mine who offers great tips and curriculum on mindfulness. Kathy Marvel is an author and international mindfulness speaker. Her latest children's book, called And She Said Breathe, teaches breathing techniques and how they can impact your brain and body in different ways. Kathy also has a video series, Operation Less Stress, available on YouTube, which includes tips on how to use mindfulness to reduce the effects of stress. I refer to her YouTube videos every week. She comes out with a new one frequently, and they are all very good. Now, she's got a new podcast. Subscribe to the podcast called The Sunshine Spotlight. It provides topics related to mindfulness that help us to live exceptionally. Kathy is a speaker instructor on mindfulness and provides workshops for both adults and children. And again, you're going to get an email that's got a ton of references that we use to build this webinar. So as always, I've had a fantastic time with you this morning. But before we go, I want to share a couple of growth opportunities with you. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the webinar, last week, John Maxwell launched Change Your World movement. The purpose of this movement is to change your world at the grassroots level by living and teaching values-based, people-centric leadership. Values-based, people-centric leadership. The process begins with transformation tables where leaders like you explore the different values contained in the book, Change Your World. If you would like to be part of a transformation table, send me an email, mde@edwardsgrouptexas.com. That M is in Michael, D is in David, E is in Edwards, at edwardsgrouptx.com. Now, I'm also hosting a 10-week leadership roundtable starting Thursday, February 25th. These are also known as masterminds. In this leadership roundtable, you'll spend an hour each week for 10 weeks with other business leaders, thought leaders, and people just like you as we dig deep into John Maxwell's book, Leadership. In this roundtable, you'll learn 11 essential changes to shift your leadership higher. So if you'd like to participate in either of these activities, if you'd like to go deeper in the topic of mindset, mindfulness, or self-awareness, give me a call, 830-446-3362, or email me at mde@edwardsgrouptx.com. You can also schedule, some one-on-one time with me through my website, www.edwardsgrouptx.com. So again, I'm grateful for the opportunity to spend the morning with you to become more mindful, and look forward to being a resource for you in the future. If you can think of any questions, comments, or concerns you'd like to share, feel free to post them below, post them in the comments. If you're interested in working further one-on-one, let me know. Thank you so much, and make it a great day.